How are you liking me lockdown haircut and facial growth? It's looking alright, isn't it? I'm going to have a massive haircut before I go home and see my missus. She will not like this. Anyway, another episode of Sandy the Landy. Now, this is taking an awfully long time to finish because of COVID-19. I'm waiting for parts to arrive. It happens. I mean, I salute every delivery driver that comes out. They're as heroic as anyone else out there. Is maintaining and keeping this country running. And I've just heard on the radio that the 400,000 gowns that are due from China turned up as wrong. I mean, like, are they taking the fucking piss or something? Anyway, enjoy this episode. Politics aside, it's going back together again. You're going to find quite a lot of interesting bits in this episode. I'm rather hoping. Ready for the test start, and it didn't want to know. So the fuel line was disconnected for quite a long time when I had the bulkhead out. So I assumed that the fuel pump needed to draw the fuel back up again. So I used the pump on the side of the pump, and it wasn't really getting anywhere. I even disconnected the fuel feed with this prehistoric fuel line, getting nothing out of it. Bonius, dryus. Checked the spark. We're getting a good spark. So I ripped the fuel pump off. It's only a couple of half-inch nuts to hold it in place, and it looks like this. So the fuel line goes in there. There's a filter sediment bowl. You can see there's some fuel in there, but that could well have been from the last time it ran, which isn't going to help it. And then we've got the actual pump side of it here. The pump is driven off the cam, and the cam will knock this up and down and allow the thing to pump through. So let me set you up on the tripod, and we're going to have a go at tearing this thing down. It's 4:30, so we're half an hour off beer o'clock. Let's get some sensible footage out before we go absolutely berserk, because it's Friday. You've got to remember the days, chaps. You have to remember the days. We're going to remain sensible. Not sensible. No, we don't have to remain. Honestly, we don't want to remain sensible. There was an interesting thing on the news just now, and they were talking about the number of people that wanted to go back to the way it was before bat flu 2020. And a very, very, very small percentage, like, I don't know, 19%, so 1 in 5 or thereabouts, said that they wanted it to go back to normal. The rest of the people were really, or the rest of those they interviewed, out of the little selection, were quite keen on the greater wildlife, the cleaner air, blah, 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 blah. So I don't quite know where this is going to go after bat flu 20. Chinese virus 20. I have no idea. Right, this thing could do with a darn good clean up, really, couldn't it? But let's, oops, oil dripping out of it as well. Let's get on the tripod and we'll work out where we're going to go. Okie dokie. Right, okay. So, first thing, let's see if there's any pressure in this thing. So if I put my thumb over the fuel feed hole, some, but it's not impressive. Let's try the same now with the cam lever. About the same. We're not talking epic amounts of pressure being generated by this thing. Right, so I'm kind of heading down the line of let's take it apart. Let's take it apart and see what on earth is going on here. I'm going to get a tray. These old grill trays, they're brilliant, you see. When you're working on a bench, you're not going to end up making a horrific great mess. Now, some of this stuff is going to turn and some of it isn't. So let's see if we can drain that fuel out of there. That fuel looks disgusting. Does it smell disgusting? Yes, it smells like varnish. Right, I'm going to get some, while that's draining off, releasing agents. Drain that bowl out anyway. The problem is, while it's pumping something, it's not pumping a lot. And if it's not pumping a lot, then it's certainly not going to feed the carburettor with what the carburetor needs to be fed with, which is petrol. No, I don't know if that's ever going to come off there. That's got, oh, the wife's toothbrush. Let's see what is actually going on here. I'll get a bit more, got some here. Just a little bit of geyser. Let's see if we can just clean this area up. It should be able to wind this thing off. But then, I wonder if it's had it off for now in the last God knows how long. There's the thread. Thread's up here. Up there. All of this lot's going to get properly cleaned up. Oh my goodness. Yeah, we should put a bit of heat on this, should we? Yeah, don't do that, chaps. That's not sensible, is it? Right, while we're doing that, while we're waiting for that to sort itself out, let's get the diaphragm out. Now, this piece here is all one big unit. It's an AC fuel pump, and it looks like the diaphragm is beneath this base plate here. So, because the whole thing's going to go and be properly cleaned up afterwards, I'm not going to bother cleaning it beforehand. I'm just going to whiz him apart. Need a reciprocal. Put the screws and bolts in. You've basically got the two halves of this pump, fairly commonplace, are held together with a series of screws, and then what we end up is the fuel chamber on one side and the pump on the other. La 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 la. Yeah, disappointed. I was going to get the kind of the slave tank out and see if I could get the car running on the slave tank, but it's pretty pointless. I know the car runs. I thought the fuel pump works, but obviously it's been sitting for a while, bone dry, and cars don't like sitting for a long time, bone dry. And also, I don't know the history of this thing. This thing could be 40 years old. Could be 40 years old. Right, here we go. You see I've got the watch strap pins through for my watch. Arrived eventually. Thank you, Mr. Postman. Right, okay, so now we've inverted. We should be able to separate these two halves. Should be able to. I'm not going to get violent with it. Let's see if this thing will turn yet. There's some murky looking crap in there. There really is. It's full of sediment. I might have to get a pair of pliers on that. Let's move you a bit further back because you're right on top of me at the moment. A bit further back, then I'm not likely to knock you over, then am I? Why I'm speaking to you like that, I don't know. Right, pair of pliers. I'm not going to go berserk with this. I just want to see if I can turn it. I can. There it goes. So I'm not gripping it with 1,000,000 foot-pounds, but I am turning. It's turning by finger now. That's good news. And this fella goes all the way up, and eventually it swivels over to one side. There we go. And be careful of the glass bowl, because the glass bowl will now be loose. That is some pretty gank in there, isn't it? Right, okay, let's pop that in the box of joy. The clip also comes out. You can literally just lift it off the top. So again, that's going to get cleaned up. Then we've got a filter in here. I'm pretty sure I'm going to be able to get a rebuild kit for this, but I'm going to leave the filter there for the time being. Probably find this thing's been glued together at some point. Oh, come along. There's a big tab there. That's the part of the diaphragm. Let's go and get something Mr. Tappy. La 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 la. Mr. Tappy. Right, now. Hey, there he goes. Right, okie doke. Now, 2 non-return valves. All looks nice and clean in there though. Then we've got Mr. Diaphragm. Now, is Mr. Diaphragm torn? He doesn't look very good. He really doesn't. He looks Mr. worn out, utterly. Oh dear. AC. Now we're going to need to get this apart, but without destroying it. I need to look at the various parts. Is that spring clip on the top there? Nope. So it must be something down here then. So what have we got here? We have got a Gert Big spring, which is holding the bottom for now on. And then we've got a rivet. I think this is the point where we're probably going to have to clean this thing up a little bit actually, because I can't see what the heck is going on here. Oh, it looks like that might be threaded. So it could just be new diaphragm, new non-return valves. These little fellas, they just pop out normally, and a new filter and seals. Or I don't know why you are. Silly arse. I'm going to get some more Trizer. This is me being sensible and sober. Right, we're starting to see what is going on here. That's got a hex head on it, as has that. However, it's a Type F apparently. It's an AC Type F pump. I'm going to get a little bit more Trizer. There we go. La, 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 la. Right, now, so you've got pump and pump. Quite a lot of stuff in here, it goes on. Right, what's happened to it now? Oh, there we are. That's jammed there. I need to, my parts wash tank, the reason I'm not using it at the moment is it's full of contaminated gloop. And I need to get a damn good clear out. But what I wanted to do was to, future project, which I wanted to go do as soon as I kind of got this out of the way, was to see if I could pump the fluid out via a filter, let's say a diesel fuel filter. Take the worst of the contaminant, use a strainer before it gets to the diesel fuel, so you're using clearing out the thickest stuff, the medium stuff, and then the finest stuff. I'll see if I can reuse then the filtered fluid, or whether I'm just pissing in the wind, so to speak. Right, okie doke, now we can see what's going on. Okie doke, okie dokie dokie doke. Well, this thing is very sticky, this lever. Mind you, it hasn't got the springs on it, has it? So just pop the springs back up there, and back up there. Feel that beautiful. Right, okay, so what does it say? Okay, fuel pump dismantling. Clean the outside of the pump, wipe dry using non-fluffy rag. Use a file marker along the flanges of the upper and lower body to ensure they're correctly reassembled. Fail. Well, I know it goes onto the engine like that, so that's not difficult, is it? Unscrew the stirrup thumb screw, swing away the stirrup, blah blah blah, hold the glass bowl to ensure it does not drop. Thank you, gravity. Lift away, blah 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 blah, followed by the cork seal and the gauze filter. Well, it's not a cork seal, it's a rubber seal in this one. There's the rubber seal. Probably find the rubber seal is actually attached to the gauze. The rubber seal has perished nastily. It's split, breaking. And there's the gauze. Obviously this whole thing's going to get cleaned up properly before it goes back together again. One gauze. La 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 la. Inspect the cork gasket for signs of damage or flattening and obtain a new one ready for assembly. Why would you want to observe it if you're going to replace it? Undo and remove the 6 body screws securing the 2 halves. Invert the upper body. 2 valve retaining plate screws. Lift away the screws. Invert the upper body. No, I'm not going to do that. So note the position of the lip on the diaphragm. So that's there. That's at the 1 o'clock position when it goes into the engine. Remove the diaphragm by rotating through 90 degrees in an anti-clockwise direction and lifting away. So it's now at the 10 o'clock position and out it comes. Right, okay, that was easy, wasn't it, when we read the instructions? And again, it's all looking very tired, isn't it? I just think this is a diaphragm issue we've got here. Because it would appear mechanical elements in here are working. I'll give it a damn good clean. Okay, recommended the lower body parts are not dismantled unless either seal or hand priming lever or link assembly required attention. Well, as far as I can see, the link assembly works. It's certainly pushing up and down, although that is sticky, but then it's probably sticky because it's got so much gank in there. Right, I think what we'll do is we'll clean all these bits up, see if we can get the new parts. You don't need to watch that. That's just boring shit work that I'll do. Clean this colour up. Gert big spring. That's nice and clean, isn't it? And it looks like I'm going to need gauze, poppets, blah 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 blah, and blah blah blah, and blah de blah de blah, blah blah blah. Yeah, we'll have it working again. No problems. Pretty sure you'll agree that that's quite a bit better, isn't it? So I still need to get the new gauze. I might even keep this gauze. We'll see what the new gauze comes like, but it needs a new seal, for the bottom of the float bowl. I've tested both of these non-return valves, so suck on that, it doesn't work, blow on it, it works. Blow on that, it doesn't work, suck on it, it does work. So both of these non-return valves are doing exactly what they should do, which is great news because they're both peened in. Peened in means that the metal's been bent over the edge of them, so I really don't want to be taking those out. The diaphragm. Right, okay, we're giving this a good clean up. Now, I can see a couple of tears in this thing. There's one there, and there's one here. And I think this thing's been underperforming for quite some time. So I've assembled it back together again because I need to order the kit, and I'm probably going to forget how it was assembled. So it's my top tip for the day. When you're waiting for bits after a good clean up, put it back together again. And you don't have to torque everything up, but just put it back together again. You don't lose the bits, and then also you remember where the bits need to go when the rebuild kit cut arrives. So we found that went into the engine like that, with the tab at 1 o'clock, and this goes on the top that way around, doesn't it? I'm just going to put the screws in, put it on the shelf, wait for the bits. I've got a gasket, I think. I'll double check I've got the gasket in the box. Right. And on that note, I shall end this particular segment. Ignition switch is out of the car because, and I love this, bus stock. Look at that. That's marvellous, isn't it? Yes. Yeah, so the ignition lock is out of the car because when you turn it to the start position, it doesn't spring back to position 2. Now, I took the whole thing out just because I wanted to check, lube up, blah, 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 the ignition lock itself. However, the spring back mechanism is part of the electronic box of tricks on the back. There's a little spring on the back of the cylinder. Now, all you do to get these things apart is carefully prise back 3 lugs, 4 lugs on this one, 4 lugs. Prise back the 4 lugs, and then take it apart. Beware, there is a small ball bearing in the bottom. There he is, down there. And he sits on a small spring, which is inside the plastic housing there. And then this bigger spring, when we put him into the container in the right orientation, he does actually work. So I just think it had just, I don't know if it popped apart or something had happened. I can't do it one-handed, I'm afraid, but it will work. I'll reassemble this fella, but again, it's another example about if something's not working how it should do, you've got nothing to lose whatsoever by taking it apart. Find out how it works. If you can't fix it, get a new one. If you can fix it, you've saved the cost. How about that? Okay, so then this chap can go back in. Now, because I fitted because there were no keys when I got this car, and the petrol versions of the ignition locks are unobtainium. Very, very similar to the Defender ones, but I think 999.999% of Defenders are diesel. Correct me if I'm wrong. And obviously this is a petrol version because it's got the choke housing on the top. Now, I never actually investigated whether... Oh, look at that, 79. 1879. It's original to the car, I reckon. That would make sense, wouldn't it? 1979, week 18. I'm taking that as reading. Whoever built these things up. So I disassembled the barrel really by just drilling the 2 roll pins out here, and that allows me to take the whole barrel out, disassemble, blah, 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 blah. I don't know if I did a video on that. I could probably do another video on how to disassemble these things and you know, get them working again, but it's not a problem. If you've got one of these and you want it fixed, you can actually always contact me through my website, and we can have a chat, and you can either send the whole damn thing to me with the key that you want to work in it, or I can talk you through what it is I've done if you want to have fun. Right, so that's that. Done all these bits here. That's the ignition lock. The only other things that weren't working on the loom are the wiper motor. I've ordered one. It could be here in a month or 2 months, I don't know. And I'm not complaining either. The other thing that I was waiting on, or the other thing that wasn't working, was the flasher. We love a bit of flashing. So the flasher on the column stalk doesn't work, so that's the next thing that's going to come off before I put the ignition switch back on again. However, I did get the bulb. So the bulbs have finally arrived, the screw fit bulb for the instrument, for the speedo. That's in place now, so that's all ready to go back in. So once the ignition lock and the flasher are working, this whole dash can go together. Because the wiper motor sits right on the far side, there's no reason why that needs to be held up. In other news, you'll notice I've put the floors in. Ah, that's a bit more comfortable, isn't it? Look at that, it's luxurious. Luxurious. So they're all in. I need to order the gaiter for the, well, certainly for the handbrake, because look at the state of it, but also for the high-low lever. That gaiter just disappeared. I don't know where it went to. I'll have to have a look. Door closes nicely. Oh yes. Oh yes. In my last video, I showed you how to sort the master cylinder push rod out. And I didn't actually show it in the video, but yes, of course, someone has pointed it out in the comments below that video, the last episode. You've got to thread lock that bolt, otherwise it will just move around under the vibration. So please thread lock it. If you haven't got thread lock, nail varnish does the same thing, any colour. I find that dirty oil colour is quite good. That's not thread lock though. This is, yeah. Anyway, so you can use nail polish, thread lock, nail polish. That's pretty much about it really. I wouldn't use anything other than those two. Certainly don't glue the fucking thing in, because that's just silly. You're not going to help the next person down the line. You can also see the other improvement I've made here is that when I had it all apart, I put an R-clip on the pedal. Sorry, not on the pedal pivot, on the pedal to servo pivot. So that the R-clip can be pulled out quite easily through the top mounting where the brake light sensor goes. So I want to get this thing so it rolls really and get it out of the barn, because there's another project coming up. Do you want a sneak preview? There's actually 2 Acerfix projects coming up. Whew. I'm going to unbobtail the bobtail. How exciting is that? I'll do a proper review on it. But this is the June 1971 Range Rover that's been bobtailed. It's got Bob, originally Plymouth Blue. Not Plymouth Blue, what are you talking about, Richard? Anyway, it's got enough original bits left in it that I could guarantee that this car will be authentic. Certainly engine, gearbox, axles, all original. D-posts, rear goalpost, although it's battered to buggery, original. Soon straighten it out. Roof was original until some gibbon cut it in half, but never mind. Flat edge doors, original. It's all there. Bulkhead, original. So that's the big reveal. I'll do a proper video on it. We're going to drag the bobtail out. The other thing that's going to be happening after the lockdown is I've potentially sold Red Shed, which is interesting. Right, here we go, bleeding the clutch. The clutch slave is right down there as far as you can possibly get. I've even taken the inner wing section out to see if I can get easy access to it. The only way I've ever had any success bleeding these clutches when they're like this, Stag, Range Rover, blah 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 blah, is to actually run a really long see-through pipe from the slave and immerse it in some fluid here. And you can see here that the bubbles actually travel upwards. All you really need to do is to open the bleed nipple and the bubbles will come through. But anyway, that's the top tip for today, is how to use a really long bleed hose to bleed the clutch out. Now that's working fine now, which I'm pleased about. Oh, where's the speedo cable gone? That's dropped down somewhere. I'll find that in a minute. It's not really a problem. Waiting for parts to arrive ready, so I'm just going through a list of jobs that needed doing. Battery off for a second. So clutch is done. Oh, put this door top on. But now the door top's on, this is the problem I remember with this door. It doesn't really line up, so I'm going to have a go at lining this up better than this. The door top itself looks presentable. Nice gaps, even. But I think really kind of needs, the whole thing needs lifting. Well, it's not too bad here. The whole door needs to go up a millimetre or two at the back end here. I'll do that in a second. I've got all the stay catches, they're all ready to go on. Yeah, so clutch done. Put all this back on now. So the top tip that came in from one of my followers, it's quite a neat one actually. I quite like this, so I'm going to do it. Where the splash guard bolts onto the front edge of the footwell here, so we've gone in behind the passenger wheel, and you'll see a series of holes along here. Now, by screwing it tight against that face there, you create a natural dirt trap on top of it, which then rots out the footwell. What, I can't remember who said this, but thanks very much for saying it. You have to look through one of the previous videos. Nut and bolt goes through it, and you put the nut against the bolt through there, and then you position this and put another nut to hold it onto the existing bolt. I'll show you in a second when it's all together, but the idea then is it leaves a little gap between the footwell and the splash guard. And that can't be a bad idea, can it? Hey? Anyway, so I'm going to give that a go. I just want to check that this bleed nipple is tight. And then I'm going to finish that. Pleased with that. Another job done. I think the SD card in my phone has died because there's been a whole load of videoing that just I've not been able to find. Irritating. Never mind. It happens. Okay, so all of the top dash is in. It's not in properly yet, but it's in place enough for me to check fit and fitment and so forth. Okay, it's not the best top dash in the world, it's not the worst. I bolted the, it will close, I bolted the splash panel in on the driver's side, that's all in. So what I was talking about earlier on this gap that someone mentioned, which is probably easy to show you on the passenger side. So, at the bottom of this kind of galv panel, there is a natural kind of space to collect crap. And if I come back a little bit and then put the torch down here, hopefully you can see there is a gap in between the wing now and the splash panel, just created by a 2mm washer. So that should hopefully allow moisture and so forth to drop straight down that gap. Done it on the driver's side as well. It's a great idea. I love it. So I've done it. I'm still waiting for parts and odds and sods to arrive. I still haven't got the fuel pump bits. It's all a bit of a pain in the arse really. As you saw earlier on, I managed to bleed the clutch. Still waiting for the wiper motor to turn up, but I've got it so that the wipers actually operate by hand, which they do. And we're just sitting here waiting for the wiper motor to sit on the end of this cable here. So when I pull the wiper, you'll see this cable comes out. That's all it needs to move by. Yeah, that's all it does. So if you find that your wipers aren't working properly, where the wheel box is, which is hidden behind the dash now, top dash, where the wheel box is on the other side of the wiper spindle, take the wiper spindle off, pull the cable out, rotate the spindle by 90 or 180 degrees, put the cable back in again, and you're using a different part of the toothed cog on the wiper box. You don't need to necessarily buy new wiper boxes. So yes, the spindle boxes. This is all starting to come together quite quickly. It's all looking very smart. I like it. I'm going to drive it. Right, we're packing. Lockdown day. I've no idea what day it is. Lockdown project. Oh, I know what the project is. It's that one. Almost finished. I can start on the next lockdown project. Anyway, what this is the heater control cable inner that controls the temperature, the hot and cold temperature. That's the outer down there, and I want to retain the outer because it's got its original kind of bendy metal kind of stretch to it. Anyway, it was tight, and you can see why it's tight, because it's just, focus, rotted out. Not rotted, just covered in rust. So I'm going to get a little bit of wet and dry paper over that and give it a good clean one end to the other. Just a little bit of paper in your fingers, run the cable up and down it, just give that a go, and I should be able to salvage that cable. Now, I'm missing the tap off the top here. So I was actually thinking about, rather than putting the unreliable valve that always seems to leak water back on there, just put a little round tap on it, or a lever on it, which is hot and cold, or summer and winter kind of mechanism, like you used to have on the pretty much anything that had an A series engine in it, as I recall. So things like, I remember Minis having a winter and summer lever on the heater bypass. So you couldn't really control the heat so much as, you know, as in the heat was on or it was off, which seems to make sense to me anyway. If you want to put the unreliable tap back on it, that's entirely up to you. The other thing I've been doing is fitting up this inner dash. Now it looks like a right fucking shambles compared to where I've been with this, but it's not. It's not, honestly. So I'm just getting all of this out so I can fit the upper dash section in. I've been checking the wheel boxes out and they seem okay. I'm happy enough with those. So and then I've been lining up the panel here that takes the heater controls. So just finding all the bits, positioning everything back into place, making sure everything's okay, making sure everything works. And it all appears to be all right, actually. I'm quite pleased with it. So that's why that's all stripped down like that. We'll get all that back together again. Oh, Mr. Gravity. It's been a while. I started putting the knobs on down here, as you can see. Miserable bastard. Anyway, try and maintain enthusiasm here, chaps. Right, okay. So these are the actual heater controls themselves. They go that way up and they go inside that panel. So I've took a photograph of these when they first came off. I know what the hot and cold is, and it's going to go onto that cable I had on the bench. And the other one, which is def and car, which I think stands for defrost and car heat, is going to connect up to this cable over here somewhere that comes at that cable there. So that's the inner, and that's the one that controls the flaps for now down to the front end there. So get that all sorted out. And we will. The objective for today is to get this top dash done and in. I still haven't had the parts arrive yet to do the fuel pump. I want to get this out of the garage ready so I can get on with next lockdown project and finish this off when it's more out in the open. Oh look, there's those bits. I was looking for those earlier on. These bits here, the sill trims that go on down here. Go on, the sill kind of goes on under the door. They can go on as well. Yes. I need something to... So I'm not getting bored with the project, I'm just getting bored with lockdown. And it happens to everyone, I guess. Everyone has up days, everyone has down days. I don't know why we locked down. I'm not going to break the rules or anything like that, but I'm just getting fed up with it. Anyway, nice long chat with the missus, and that was nice, that was pleasant. But, yeah, we are currently, what are we? I don't even know what the date is. The date is day 21st of April. There you go, look at that. It's nearly 4 months since Christmas, and that just seems a lifetime ago. Anyway, my moods go up and down at the best of times. Today is a not particularly up day, let's put it that way. Right, but we're going to cheer ourselves up before it gets to the 5 o'clock beer. I do need to tidy some of this wiring up. So some of this red insulation tape up here was just to bind the loom into rough sort of areas, rough locations. Rough locations. So I can tidy all that lot up, and I'm going to do all that. I'm not going to bother videoing, I'm afraid, folks, because it just becomes a ball's ache. And I just end up with so much bloody footage to edit. But this is the before, and I shall show you a little bit later on what the after is. That cable needs to route through to over here on its outer sheath, which is over there on the inner wing. You see that straight piece of metal over there. That can then go over here to route through for the heater controls. And then there's this piece of metal here. That piece of metal there goes along there, and that acts as the lower dash support and braces out this Mr. Gravity. Braces out this piece here, which is kind of the edges of the dash pod, the instrument pod, if you get my drift. So that piece there actually fits onto the upper dash section. If I undid all these spire bolts up here, and undid the line of screws, which I haven't put in yet along the edge of the bulkhead, because you can see at the moment it's wobbly, but it won't be when I finish this. Then the whole upper dash comes out and leaves the rest of it in place. Makes life an awful lot easier, because when I took this thing apart I really didn't understand how the dash all fit together. Now I do. It's a piece of cake. And there was a whole load of C's fixings and shit in there. I've got all these window catches working. Look at these things can be a bit of a pain in the arse. Oh sorry, window's actually open, so let's close the window. There we are. window locked. Nice, eh? The only thing I've got is this rivet here, that rivet, is causing the window to... It's not so bad that time. It has had moments where it's kind of stopped there. It didn't that time. You can hear it clicking on it. Just as it hits it. So I might have to get the needle file in there and just shave that off. Put the handles on the inside of the doors, pull handles. It's all going back together quite nice. I'll put the rubber seal, there, that's making me feel better already, in here. Now the metal's a bit too fat here on this corner. I'm going to need to work out what I'm going to do with that, because sort that out. This is it's still recovering. The Charlton axle. Southpaw axle, that's what am I talking about. Southpaw axle. Lovely. And yeah, I was just looking at the quality of my paint. Look at the orange peel on this. I mean, that is proper Land Rover paint, that is, isn't it? I don't think that the difference in colour is actually going to make too much difference to it, but then I've been kind of looking at it day in, day out, so it probably won't to me. I ordered a pair of these, which pissed me off, and then found them. So I ordered a pair of those, but I've ordered them in Galv, so if the Galv ones are on their way, I might as well put the Galv ones on. I just didn't have any 1 centimetre steel bar, otherwise you could make these things yourself. They're really not difficult. But I ordered a pair of Galv ones to go onto this. Costs are currently, including the VAT, I think the costs are around the £1,400 mark on parts. And we add to that the cost of the car, and then obviously any of my hobby time that's gone into lockdown projects. Sandy the Landy. So there's a fair amount of work gone into this. It's been fun. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. You see the wipers are kind of, at the moment there's no wiper motor. I've ordered the wiper motor, generic pattern part, but I've got it so that I'm happy that the wipers are in roughly the sort of right place. Now the problem we've got here is that's a new style arm, which is bent, and the other one's an old style arm, chrome. It's actually been painted over the top. What's chrome? Seeing someone's painted it, rattle canned it black. What I'm going to do is, once I know that the wipers are in the right place, undo this grub screw. I'm going to file a flat onto the shaft for now, so that it holds it a bit tighter, because it can just, you know, kind of undo itself on the shaft. It's not as good as the original jobby. Love the word jobby. Ever go to the zoo, you always stand near the monkey enclosure, because you're guaranteed to find a monkey will be throwing its own jobby. It's fantastic. Well, the other thing I might do today, in preparation for the bonnet going back on, is I'm going to pop this fella back on. It goes there. And then that's along with a couple of clips to hold the loom up against the bulkhead. Ah! Clip goes there, just to hold the loom in place. I didn't actually order any ignition parts for this car, and I hadn't planned on doing the carburettor either, but I might end up doing the carburettor. We'll get it running first of all. Now, I seem to recall that when I first had this thing running, it ran sweet, but it had a little bit of a misfire. So I might end up putting new points, and the cap actually isn't too bad. Unclip, put that over there, so it's all fall on the floor. Put that out of the way. So the distributor cap is, I've seen a lot worse. It's all right, does the job, and the rotor is some wanky pattern part. Again, this is sort of, I don't like these things with the big old rivet on them, but it works. The points, I mean, I'm getting a spark off it, not the most beautiful spark, but again, all these are kind of cheapo, nasty pattern parts. So what I might do is, once the engine's running, and I know the engine's running, what I'll do is I'll give this, you can see the distributor mechanical advance is working beautifully there. I'll give it a distributor overhaul. I don't know that the vacuum advance is working. I could check that as well. So that's added that onto my list. But an ignition overhaul, once we've got the engine back up and running, we can get on with all of that crap. It's got all fresh oil and everything in it. The only one I haven't done yet is I haven't topped up the steering box. Remember, it leaked all over the back of my Range Rover when I sort of dumped it in there upside down. So I just need to undo that plug, top up the steering box. Yeah, that's about it really. I'm going to crack on and do this dash. Put the music on. Look forward to my beer. I was talking to my missus, and all the chip shops at home in High Wycombe, they're all open, but for delivery only. Order online, pay online, and they deliver your fish and chips to you. I was just thinking I could murder a big bag of chips, chip shop chips. Apart from my missus and boys and the cat, that's the thing I'm missing the most out of all this. This is a marvellous old beast, though. It really is. It's epic. It really is a marvellous thing. And I think once this is kind of done, the work moving forwards is really... I haven't put these bolts in, by the way. I need to do those still. The work moving forwards is going to largely be for... Oh, look, there's a... Wonder where they've gone to. Going to largely be something that someone could potentially do kind of on a rolling restoration basis, because getting it reliable, getting it solid was the key objective out of this project. Okay, it went a little bit further than I anticipated, because I wasn't really predicting that the bulk of the filler, certainly the top half of the bulkhead, was filler. And you imagine that all of this rail here had foam wedged in the top, covered by filler. And it didn't have a lot of structural integrity, and this footwell had been bodged and that footwell had been bodged, so cutting it all out and then finding A-posts overlaid over the top of old A-posts, the job just went on to a whole new level. So the quick and easy flip turned into more of a restoration. It's a good word, that. I like restoration, because this to me is perfect. Now I appreciate it's not going to meet the tastes of everyone on this, you know, any of the people that watch these videos. Some people would like have this thing absolutely pristine. I'll give it a wash. I mean, not necessarily saying the dust is part of the whole thing, and perhaps use a bit of TFR on the side panel here just to give it a bit of a clean up. And the roof as well is just covered in dirt. It needs to get outside. It's one of the reasons I want to get the engine running, so I can drive it out. Drive it around the field, that would be a laugh, wouldn't it? Yeah, we could do that. Not today, but I want to get the... because I can't even start it up at the moment because there's no fuel pump on, and obviously the oil way to the fuel pump there is all exposed, so it's just going to pour oil out. I could blank that off, I suppose. Because I've got a few chaps ever struggling to get cars up and running, strongly recommend that before you dump your lawnmower next time, whiz the tank off the top of it, because this is a, I don't know, quarter-gallon tank, but off the bottom is just more often than not, there's no fuel in it, it's just a standard feed, and you just attach it using a bit of fuel line onto the carburettor, gravity feed into the carburettor, and I had that 72 Range Rover was running off this thing for a good 3 minutes. But yeah, you got a properly vented fuel tank then in a plastic fuel suitable container. It certainly beats the jar of petrol on the roof. Just a little bit safer. I mean, ideally, obviously, I'd have the fuel pump attached up working. Yes. Stop being so fucking miserable, Richard. Cheer yourself up, you bastard. I've ordered this switch as well, so we can get that sorted out, get the brake lights working. The flasher I never did get working. The flasher I cannot get working. It's going to need another control. The problem is this is a Lucas control, and I'm going to kind of leave it so it doesn't have a flasher. Bollocks to it. The full beam, dip beam works, the indicator works, the horn works, just the flasher doesn't, so it's going to stay that way. The other thing that I couldn't get fixed was I couldn't get the return on the ignition switch to work. Now, because that's a bit more tucked behind the dashboard, I am going to get one of those. It's only held in by 2 screws here, but I'm going to get the ignition electrical contact switch sorted out, because I think the key sticking in the start position is probably not necessarily a good thing. You can deal without a flasher just by flicking the lights on and off. You can't deal easily with a starter switch that doesn't return back to position 2 after you've started the engine and leaves the starter engaged. It's just going to end up wrecking things. So I'm going to order one of those. I did try to fix it. I took it all apart. You've seen the video. Maybe you didn't, because my phone went absolutely berserk, which I think I've diagnosed down to the little micro SD card is packed up in my phone. I really should get a proper camera to video these sequences, not use a Samsung Galaxy S7. But pretty much every single Land Rover, Range Rover video on this channel has been filmed using a Samsung Galaxy S7. I mean, it's not a bad little phone, really, is it? Very nice. This needs to be running. Live, damn it. We know the engine runs, so I'm happy enough with that. We, the royal we know. I think that's the me and my evil twin brother who lives in the cellar know that this engine runs. It's my evil twin brother that's got the love of alcohol, the dislike of stupid people, and the foul language. Oh, and the bad attitude. I don't have any of those traits.